Fairmont Crest, tragedy rarely begins with a loud explosion. More often, it starts with a lingering glance, a question that seems ordinary on the surface. A silence stretched a little too long between two people sleeping under the same roof, but no longer truly standing on the same side. And right now, the most frightening thing in Bill and Hayley's marriage is no longer Lynette appearing like an outside thorn. It is the fact that Bill is finally beginning to sense a strange imbalance in the very woman he married. For a long time, Bill chose to believe the version of the story that was easiest on his heart. He convinced himself that Hayley was the poor wife being harassed, exploited, and preyed upon by a greedy woman like Lynette. That interpretation allowed Bill to hold on to the feeling that he was still a man in control, still a husband capable of protecting his marriage, still sharp enough to recognize danger when it appeared. Ironically, that very pride is what blinded him for so long. Because a man who only suspects the person standing outside the door rarely realizes that the door was opened from the inside a very long time ago. What makes this storyline so compelling is not the question of whether Lynette is dangerous, because everyone can already see that she is. What pulls the audience in is the sense that Bill has seen one half of the truth clearly and completely missed the other half. And in soap opera storytelling, that is always the most painful kind of mistake. He recognizes that Lynette knows too much, appears at moments that are far too convenient, and seems to understand Hayley's weak points far too well to be anything less than a serious threat. But he still has not dared to touch the far more terrifying possibility that Lynette is not just someone disrupting this marriage, but the shadow of a past Hayley has never told the truth about. In other words, Bill suspects Lynette with his mind, but he is not yet cruel enough to himself to suspect Hayley with his heart. And that is where the storyline begins to crack open in a way that is beautiful, painful, and perfectly suited to the spirit of daytime drama for viewers who have lived long enough to understand that what destroys a marriage is not always physical betrayal, but often the moment one person realizes they have loved someone who never truly existed. On the surface, Hayley is still playing the role of the cornered wife very well. She knows how to lower her voice when she needs to seem vulnerable, knows exactly when to let her eyes turn red just enough, knows how to choose each word carefully so the man in front of her believes she is frightened because she is being threatened, not panicked because her secrets are close to being exposed. But the more observant Bill becomes, the less he can ignore a contradiction that is hard to swallow. If Hayley is truly innocent, why does she need to explain so much? A person who is being falsely accused usually clings to the simplicity of the truth. They may be hurt, they may be angry, but they do not need to build layer after layer of carefully shaped reasoning around themselves. Only people trying to steer another person's perception talk too much, too skillfully, too perfectly in rhythm until it starts to sound artificial. Belle is beginning to feel that. Not through any concrete evidence, but through the instincts of a man who has seen enough lies in his life to recognize their shape. And that is the real turning point in this story. Bill is no longer listening only to what Hayley says. He is beginning to notice how she says it, how quickly she answers, how she avoids empty spaces, how her eyes shift when Lynette's name comes up. Once a husband starts observing his wife the way he would observe a suspect, the marriage has already taken one step into the graveyard. That is why the questions Bill asks Hayley are no longer merely questions. They are thin, sharp, cold blades, cutting away layer after layer of makeup from this life that once looked perfect. If you and Lynette were never close, then why did she know so much about you? This is not just an accusation. It is a direct strike at the structure Hayley has spent so long building. The idea that Lynette is simply some random leech attaching herself to her life. No, a person who knows too much is rarely an outsider. A person who knows too much is usually someone who once stood very close. And that possibility alone is enough to make Bill go cold. Because if Hayley truly has a deeper connection to Lynette than she ever admitted, then everything that happened after the wedding is no longer an unexpected risk. It may be the inevitable consequence of a secret hidden on purpose. Another question, more painful and more poisonous, could rise from Bill's wounded pride as a man. Are you afraid of Lynette? Or are you afraid that I will learn the truth? That kind of question strips away Hayley's ability to hide completely inside the role of victim because it forces her to confront the central issue. Is her real fear outside the house or inside it? Hayley may still try to escape through vague answers, and that is exactly where the drama reaches its fullest power. She does not need to confess. She only needs to hesitate for a second too long, to react too strongly in the wrong place, to deny something nobody even asked, and Bill will hear something even more frightening than a confession. Panic. A man like Bill may not know the whole truth yet, but he has enough experience to recognize the scent of collapse when it begins to spread through a room. The more he questions her, the more cracks he sees in his wife's story. If Lynette is falsely accusing you, why are you afraid to face her in front of me? If you are innocent, why do you insist that every conversation about her happen in private, in haste, in a defensive tone? A person who has truly been wronged usually wants light. Only someone with something to hide fears letting a third person enter the room. This is the point where the storyline stops being surface-level drama and becomes a fascinating psychological study. Bill is beginning to understand that the problem is not what Lynette says. The problem is that the moment Lynette appears, Hayley stops being the soft, confident, well-controlled version of herself. And then the most terrifying question of all hangs between them like a chandelier about to fall. Did you lie to me about Lynette from the very beginning? It is a cruel question because it does not just cast doubt on one event. It casts doubt on the entire foundation of the marriage. If Hayley lied from the starting point, then Bill will be forced to look back on the whole journey of their relationship through a completely different lens. The moments when she was gentle, the time she leaned on him, the time she made him believe he was needed, loved, chosen, how much of that was real? That is why older viewers are especially likely to connect with this storyline. At an age when people understand human nature all too well, the pain is not simply in being cheated out of money or betrayed once. It is in the bitter discovery that what you cherished as a refuge may have only been someone else's temporary shelter. So the question, did you marry me for love, or because you needed somewhere to hide, is not just Bill interrogating his wife. It is the voice of wounded self-respect. It pushes this confrontation far beyond jealousy or ordinary suspicion and touches something much deeper, a man realizing he may not have been the destination of love at all, only the vehicle someone used to escape the past. Within that structure, Lynette becomes especially interesting because she is not just a simple villain. She is the open pit of the past beneath this marriage. The more present she becomes, the more she proves that the secret between her and Hayley cannot be just a few exchanged dollars. Money can buy silence for a time, but it cannot create the kind of knowledge that lets one person know exactly where to press to make another tremble. That suggests an older bond, a deeper one, perhaps a much dirtier one. Is Lynette blackmailing Hayley over something recent, or over an old secret? That question opens the widest possible door for this plot to grow. Because if this is only about a recent incident, Hayley may still be able to put out the fire. But if it is the legacy of an entire past built on deception, then every attempt to push Lynette away will only expose more cracks in her life. Bill may not have the facts yet, but he is beginning to feel one instinctive truth very clearly. No innocent woman reacts to a false accuser the way Hayley reacts to Lynette. That is not the reaction of disgust, it is the reaction of terror. That is why the storyline becomes more powerful the further it goes, because it quietly reverses the balance of power in Bill's house. On the surface, Bill is still the one asking the questions, applying the pressure, forcing his wife into a corner. But psychologically, he is the one standing at the edge of the cliff. Because if Hayley stays silent a few seconds too long, if she answers one beat too slowly, he will have to face the cruelest possibility of all. Was any part of this marriage real? The audience is not waiting for a simple exposure scene. They are waiting for the moment Bill realizes that all of his masculine confidence, All the certainty he once had that he could read other people has been defeated inside his own home. And if true tragedy explodes, it will not arrive through screaming. It will arrive in the way Bill falls silent after one of Hayley's evasive answers, looks at her longer than usual, and sees for the first time how unfamiliar his wife's face has become. Hayley may still escape this scene. For a woman like her, surviving through words is not a choice, it is instinct. She may twist the story into shame over her past, blame everything on Lynette's obsessive harassment, soften Bill once more with tears and fragility. But even if she survives tonight, the cost has already begun to show itself. Once suspicion changes direction, it never returns to its original form. Bill may still hold Hayley after the argument. He may still tell her that he wants to believe her. But from the moment he begins to ask himself who lied first, Lynette or Hayley, that marriage stops being a shelter. It becomes an endless interrogation room where every smile is examined, every explanation is weighed, and every silence can become evidence. That is why the Bill, Hayley, and Lynette storyline is so powerful right now. It does not merely show the audience a man doubting his wife. It lets them witness the slow death of a beautiful illusion. It reminds viewers that the most frightening thing in love is not when a third party enters, but when people realize the third party may have been there all along. Woven into every layer of truth and falsehood, silently bearing witness to things that were never spoken. The more Bill questions, the more he believes he is moving closer to protecting his marriage. But perhaps, in a twist worthy of classic soap opera storytelling, those very questions will lead him to the most painful discovery of his life. The woman he thinks he is saving may never have needed saving at all, because she is not the only victim in this story. She may be one of the people who created it. And when Bill realizes that, he will not only lose faith in Hayley, he will lose faith in his own judgment. For a man like Bill, that is the deepest wound of all. And for the audience, that is exactly what makes it impossible to look away. Thank you all for taking the time to watch my video, and thank you for your trust. Everything I create is purely personal speculation and sharing. If you found this video good and helpful, please support me with a like and leave a comment. If you have better ideas or more interesting predictions, please share them in the comments so everyone can discuss together. I truly appreciate every contribution and all of your support. Thank you so much. And if you have not followed us yet, please scroll down and hit the subscribe button.